Hi, my name is Emily Perella, and today I'm going to be presenting about gender roles in non-Western cultures. So what are non-Western cultures? Non-Western cultures consist of cultures derived from areas outside of the US, Europe, and Canada. These cultures are not rooted in Eurocentric beliefs and practices. It includes Asia, Africa, South America, Oceania, and indigenous cultures. About 5/6 of the world's population resides in non-Western nations. Examples of this would be mostly Asian countries, especially China and Japan. Here is a map of what is considered Western and then non-Western countries. So all of the red ones are Western countries, so the United States and Canada, and then all of Europe and Australia. And then the blue ones are the non-Western countries. So you can see that there's a lot more diversity in the non-Western countries. So what is the importance of gender roles? Gender roles are defined as the responsibilities, expectations, and appropriate behaviors for each gender in a society. They can prefer a patriarchal or a matriarchal society, depending on the culture's beliefs, as well as recognition of gender beyond male and female. Gender roles typically have deep roots in the culture's history and are influenced by factors such as religion. So, first we're going to start off with gender roles in Asia. This slide's going to focus on China and Japan. So in Japan, there's a very traditional view on gender roles, as there is with most of Asia. It's male-dominated, and females are typically in the household. There's also high expectations for the male's salary and female's ability to raise children. So the men typically work very long hours, and women are more entering the workforce now, but they're expected to mostly just raise children and take care of the house. And then in China, it's pretty similar, just their ideas on gender roles are rooted in Confucianism. So they also promote male dominance, and there's a strong preference for sons being born instead of daughters. Hardworking women are in and out of the household. Also in Asia, we have India and Southeast Asia. So India also promotes the patriarchy, which is most notable in the rural areas. There's also a growing number of women seeking education. There's a strong religious background, as Hinduism promotes traditional gender roles. And Southeast Asia is also patriarchal. Nations like Bangladesh are working against gender-related violence, and they're making a lot of progress with it today, actually. In some areas, gender equality is higher than in East Asia. Gender roles in Sub-Saharan Africa. Unfortunately, Sub-Saharan Africa ranks lowest in literacy for women, as well as highest in maternal mortality rates. There is also reforms taking place to combat these statistics. And the country of Gabon recently released a law for women's equal pay. The Republic of Congo also released laws to combat domestic violence. And the source that I used for this slide had some really good information about that, which we'll get into later in the presentation. Gender roles in North Africa and Middle East. So in this area, there's a very strict gender disparity. Women are mostly confined to a domestic setting. They don't really leave the house as much as men in these areas for the most part. There's also a very heavy religious influence in these areas. So whatever the religious doctrine of the area says is what the society will go based off of. However, reforms are introduced as women are now able to drive in Saudi Arabia, which is a more recent thing that they just added. Progress in women's education in places such as Egypt as well. Gender roles in Latin America. In Brazil, there's a philosophy known as machismo, which highlights the importance of the patriarchy. There's also a heavy emphasis placed on women's ability to raise children and raise strong sons especially. However, more women are entering the workforce in recent years. And there's also indigenous people in this area that we'll talk about later. Gender roles in Aboriginal Oceania. There's also more relaxed views on gender than in other cultures here. In Samoa, there are fluid gender roles that involve both traditional male and female characteristics in each gender. So they have what we would think of as non-binary in Samoa, and they actually have a community of people that don't identify as either male or female. Also, it is altered by European influence and Christian missionaries that have came here over the years and changed what they thought about. So all the untouched societies that had their former beliefs changed by missionaries in the last couple of years. Gender socialization around the world. As boys and girls grow up, they are socialized differently. Today, social media influences them greatly, with young girls having increased self-esteem issues over those of boys. Education, social reforms, and open attitudes are necessary to combat these issues. It is important to know about these cultures and respect them in order to promote each individual, no matter their gender. So this goes into multicultural competence and trying to understand people better, especially when you're becoming a therapist. You have to understand their culture. Non-traditional gender roles in non-Western countries. Despite many nations having traditional patriarchal roles, in some cases, women are the dominant ones in society. The Mosul people of China have a matriarchal society, as they hunt, fish, and do not believe in a traditional marriage. Men are responsible only for the agriculture in this area. Also, there is Aboriginal tribes in New Guinea, known as the Arapesh Society, which have shown assertive women and passive men, and were a cooperative and peaceful society overall. How do gender roles affect the individual? By empowering a gender in society, that gender becomes more assertive and confident. So it goes to an individual level, so it affects the person as a whole, not just because of their culture, but the way they act with other people on a daily basis. It's not entirely biological based. Societal norms cause gender roles as well as gender prejudices. The influence of religion on gender roles. Various religions have varying impacts on what society perceives gender as. In the US, we are largely Christian-based, which consists of very traditional values on gender that can exclude certain groups from their consideration. In Middle Eastern nations, the main faith is Islam, which has different ideas on gender than we do in the US, which are more strict in some cases. Despite this, some faiths such as Hinduism focus less on gender and are not as stern. Changing gender roles throughout history. Historically, women would be forced to have arranged marriages and value having a family over their career and personal life. Although this still happens in some nations around the world, as Indonesia and Zambia still practice this, it is much less common today. However, many reforms have been made that allow women to thrive economically and socially outside of the home. Statistics on gender equality. So the chart on the side shows both Western and non-Western nations' beliefs on gender equality. Many non-Western countries are in the middle to lower end of the data. However, India and the Philippines ranked higher. So you can see that the top country who believes in gender equality the most is the Netherlands. The green bars on the side show the percentage of people that believe gender equality is likely in the near future, and the blue shows the population that doesn't show that. So you can see towards the middle there's a lot of non-Western countries like Brazil, Kenya, Turkey, Japan, and towards the top there's actually some non-Western countries too. Here's another map about gender equality and how people feel about it. So you can see that some of the top ranking ones are Canada, the United States, and Australia, and you can see more of the dark green in Europe and even South America. The lighter colors, like the white and the really light green, are mostly in Africa and Asia, which show that the people do not believe as much in gender equality and how important it is. Education and employment based on gender. In non-Western countries, ability to pursue education and a career varies greatly. In China, many women produce textiles, enabling them to earn a higher salary than some men as they sell their own products from home on the side. This gives them more of an advantage, and they actually have more rights because of their higher salary. In Saudi Arabia, only 15% of women are in the labor force, which is going up every day. Inclusion of LGBTQ+ in non-Western cultures. In Samoa, there are 3 genders recognized: male, female, and a more fluid gender similar to what we think of as non-binary in the US. Many indigenous communities believe that gender is a more spiritual factor rather than biological and relies more on what the person themselves is feeling. Some patriarchal societies with strong religious ties fail to include LGBTQ+ people in their society, an issue which is improving today. Gender and cultural identity. Societies with more inclusive rights for women typically result in higher self-esteem for them. By gaining a better understanding of a person's culture, we can identify how that affects their gender and help that society improve its inclusion. Gender roles are complex and involve many factors that have changed throughout history. Non-Western gender roles impact on psychology. Gender roles also greatly affect a person's psychology. When men are given a provider role, they typically become more assertive and dominant. When women are given a domestic role, they can become less assertive in some cases. If someone is unhappy with their gender role, it can lead to mental health issues. In some Middle Eastern societies, women do not have many opportunities to move outside the home, as the authority is given to the man of the family. How do non-Western gender roles differ from ours in the US? In the US, we follow mostly Eurocentric society for gender roles. Our society is still mostly patriarchal, despite the fact that most women work and are not homemakers as frequently. In some indigenous cultures, matriarchy is actually preferred. On the other hand, other cultures have a much more patriarchal society than we do in the US, and gender roles are typically on a wide spectrum of variation. The future of gender roles. So there are many very dated concepts for gender roles that still take place today. In the 21st century, women have much more rights, and new innovations have made life easier for all people. Sub-Saharan Africa has become one of the top reforming regions in recent years, with many advances to their formerly low statistics. There have been pivotal shifts in many non-Western nations' beliefs in gender, and gender roles continue to change today. Thank you for watching and have a great rest of your day.